Captain America Civil War, the movie that Batman v Superman wishes it could grow up to be. This week we tackle Civil War, and to get us set up for it, a few of us watched most of Marvel's Phase 2 as a primer for Civil War that is available now on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, all those different things. So make sure to go get that a listen ahead of this. Make sure we will be talking about spoilers in this episode. So if you have not seen the movie yet, and who am I kidding? Everybody went and saw this movie. It's huge. But just be forewarned. So sit back and enjoy MySequel, Captain America Civil War. This is Derek Olson with the MySequel podcast. We've got a full house tonight. Tonight we've got Robert.
Hello, I'm Robert.
Matt.
Hello.
Jake.
Hello, I'm Jake.
Thank you. Ryan.
Yeah, that's me.
And then we've got a newcomer tonight, Keith.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we're a full house tonight. So, and we are talking about Civil War, Captain America Civil War, which we actually all went and saw. Not that that's necessarily going to be the way we always do this, but we did all go see this movie together, which is kind of fun. So yeah, what's kind of nice is this is probably going to be the timeliest MySequel we've done. When this comes out, we won't even be in weekend 2 of the movie, which is kind of nice. With that being said, though, since we did see it, a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about are very spoiler heavy. It's kind of unavoidable when what we're talking about. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, maybe pause this, go watch the movie, and then start it back up again. I don't know. Do that. Sure. So yeah, Captain America Civil War. Let's start with just our initial thoughts. We don't need to get into super detail here because we got a lot of stuff to cover, but just our initial thoughts right off the bat of the movie. This is the second time I have seen it. I saw it on the Thursday night opening. I loved it. I freaking loved it. I would put this towards the top of Marvel movies for me. So,
Again, I think this was another place where we can shit on Batman versus Superman.
yes.
Because this is how you do this correctly.
Yep.
I really did enjoy this movie.
I think especially they did kind of make a... This was announced after Batman Superman, and then they put this on the same weekend that Batman Superman was supposed to originally open. Because this is when Batman Superman was supposed to come out. And then they're like, oh, we're also going to do something similar and put it on the same weekend.
So it was almost Marvel versus DC versus Batman versus Superman.
Yes.
Checkmate.
Yeah, I think so. Matt, your thoughts?
Loved it. I think this is the best of the Marvel movies so far.
But Ryan and Keith down there.
I really loved it. It's probably my third favorite after the first Avengers movie and the Winter Soldier. So I thought the action was just great in this.
Based on what I've seen so far from the Marvel movies, I would have to say it was pretty darn good.
Which is funny now because we get to make fun of Ryan because we always make fun of Matt for not seeing the movies that are previous to this one. And Ryan didn't see Winter Soldier.
I've wanted to see it. That counts, right? I mean, wanting to see it.
I am so far ahead of the game.
Because speaking of, Matt had not seen Winter Soldier until we actually recently, this probably, by the time this goes up, should be the day before. Make sure to watch that before this one. Robert, Jake, Matt, and I, we marathoned through most of Phase 2 Marvel in a day and recorded a little kind of podcast video thing, which was a lot of fun. So we watched Winter Soldier and all that. So yeah, Matt finally got to see that one. So he's ahead.
But technically, Matt, you're only a little bit ahead of the game.
You win this round.
You know, if you are winning, it doesn't matter by how much you're winning, as long as you keep winning. Don't you listen to Donald Trump or anything?
Fair enough.
No, I can't say that I listened to that.
So yeah. All right, cool. So this is kind of interesting. We were talking about this beforehand. How are we going to handle this as far as MySequel goes? We talk about sequels. Well, this movie is a sequel to Winter Soldier. It is a direct sequel, but in a way, this is Avengers 2.5. I mean, really. I mean, it's most of the Avengers in it. It has farther repercussions than maybe some of the individual movies normally do. So we are going to kind of talk a little bit of both. So real quick, let's talk about Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier kind of came out of nowhere, I think. A lot of people liked the first Captain America, but nobody really loved it. I kind of did. But everybody's like, Captain America. Nobody really cares that much about Captain America. And then Civil War came out, and I think a lot of people were like, oh, wait a minute. This is... I think a lot of people's lists, Winter Soldier's at the top.
I kind of had the same reaction. I didn't see Winter Soldier either until last weekend when we watched them back to back. And I had no desire to see another Captain America movie just because the first one wasn't bad, but it wasn't good enough that I was going to go to the theater and see all of these. And then having watched it with everybody else last weekend, I was really missing out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's because the first Captain America seems so much like it's its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Since, it takes place before all of this stuff, that maybe it just doesn't quite connect to the other ones as much when you watch it. So
Yeah, I think so. Definitely being a period piece sets it apart from everybody else. But yeah, directed by the Russo brothers. Winter Soldier was directed by the Russo brothers, which is awesome because really their claim to fame before this was TV. They did a lot of TV. They did a lot of Community and Arrested Development were kind of two of their big ones. And now they're helming some of the biggest movies out there. The writers of this one are writing the next Avengers movie, and the Russo brothers are directing it since Joss Whedon kind of stepped down. I honestly want to say I'm more excited about the Russo brothers doing the next Avengers movie than I think I would be about Joss Whedon doing another one. Because I didn't like Age of Ultron as much as the first. I think there was a little bit of a down there, so I'm kind of excited that the Russo brothers, I think, are kind of on the upswing, in my opinion. So I'm excited to see what they do. And again, this was almost like their tryout, kind of. They get most of the characters. So, yeah.
I think I can kind of see where you're coming from on that. Personally, I like Joss Whedon, but I don't necessarily think he was the best person for the Avengers, because I think he does a lot better on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that the movies were bad, but yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to see what the Russo brothers do with it. So,
Yeah, the Winter Soldier. What I think was important about Winter Soldier was they kind of took a different tone with that. Again, you should probably watch Winter Soldier for this. But I really liked that. Winter Soldier is very much a spy movie, espionage movie, which was cool. Which kind of set it apart from some of the other. It wasn't just a superhero movie. It was kind of also this other thing. I think it was great, and I think that's what made a lot of people really enjoy it. That it was very different.
I think it kind of surprised me, honestly, because I didn't know what they would do for the next sequel to Captain America. He's been de-thawed. The Avengers exist. What exactly is he doing? And it was a pretty good sequel to Captain America because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, if we would have done Winter Soldier as a MySequel, I think would have been pretty solid.
We always could do it later.
Let's backtrack and just rehash everything we're talking about now. We're just cut out this little chunk of audio and release it. 2 episodes in 1. We're lazy.
Well, we did kind of talk a little bit about it
We did.
this past weekend, so
That's true. Definitely give that a
I think we all
listen.
agreed that was an excellent movie.
Yeah. So yeah, Winter Soldier, really good, really solid movie. Really sets up for Ryan, who didn't see it, the stuff with Bucky, establishing Bucky as the Winter Soldier. He's amnesiac. He doesn't remember his past. He's used by Hydra as assassin. Kind of sets all that up, and the very end of that movie is all about going to find Bucky, which is even because there's that little moment of Age of Ultron where Falcon's in it very briefly in Age of Ultron, and he talks about following up cold leads and stuff because they're kind of doing that at the same time, movie wise, of kind of what's happening. So yeah, then I think so. This was the next kind of logical extension. We get a lot of Bucky in this, which makes me excited. I liked that actor a lot, Sebastian Stan. He was in The Martian.
And Hot Tub Time Machine, too.
Oh my God, he is. He's one of the ski bros, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
really,
I need to go back and watch that again. Yay. He does kind of look that. He's a pretty man. He's another.
He's a pretty man.
He is. They're all.
Derek uses a lot of interesting adjectives to describe men.
Is that a note? Did you write that down? Bucky, pretty man.
Could have. I wrote it.
Delightful.
Delightful. Did you say delightful? Holy shit.
Yes, I did.
I wrote it on my Trapper Keeper.
A big heart with an arrow through it.
Yep. Yes.
Writing his name and Bucky's name together. Derek and Bucky, Winter Soldier.
Yay. Yeah. Which I think is interesting, kind of going back to some of the comics. They did a good job of adapting the Winter Soldier comic with the movie. I mean, that was Brubaker, I think, who did Winter Soldier.
Brubaker, yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, in the comics, is Winter Soldier, is he super soldier serumized?
Kind of. It's not
I wanna say
directly.
he's not.
It's not, I don't think, directly the same stuff Steve had, but he is super powered, I think, in the comic books. At least I always got that. Beyond the metal arm,
I don't think so. I think I gotta look that up. I think that the metal arm gives him strength, and he's extremely good with weapons and stuff. But he doesn't have the strength that Cap has.
No,
which clearly he does in this movie.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think in the comics he's as strong as Steve, but I think he is.
Well, in the movies, in the first Captain America movie where he rescues Bucky, Zola had experimented on him.
Yeah, I remember that, but they were never really clear on whether or not they injected him
No.
or anything.
Well,
No.
but I think because there were other Winter Soldiers, like that we find out in this movie, spoiler alert, I think that kind of implies that
Superman
Bucky...
dies at the end. I'm sorry.
That's long gone. Our listeners should have heard that like 3 episodes ago, Robert. But anyways, they give the serum to those other guys, which I'm assuming is a variation of the super soldier serum to some degree. So I'm assuming Bucky also had a similar thing.
Yeah, it seemed to kind of imply that it's not exactly the same stuff as what Steve had.
Bucky end up with the Soviets? Like, did they ever specifically mention that somewhere?
No.
Or is it just implied that after World War II that basically
He fell out of a train in Germany
and floated in the ocean?
Clearly that.
But
that,
the German
that answers
scientists,
all your questions.
the German scientists experimented on him, though.
Apparently, you don't understand. He fell out of a train in Germany. Okay, there's only one place that you can go when it's falling out of a train in Germany, and that's Russia.
Right, Soviet Russia.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't. In the movies, they never really got into much detail of how he ended up there.
I think I understand now. So he fell out of a train into another train going to Siberia.
Going the other way.
Finally, thank you, Robert. It makes sense now.
Cleared that up. Well, and even
Yes,
in
that's
this,
correct.
even in this movie, though, I mean, they kind of hint at that it's Hydra, even the Russians. That Hydra had infiltrated them as well. So it wasn't just the Soviets. It was also a Hydra thing. So I would say that is maybe one flaw a little bit, that all of that is just a touch hinky, but that kind of goes back to Winter Soldier, that we don't really get a whole lot of how that kind of goes down. We get a little bit, but...
Well, and it's kind of the whole odd thing with the timeline of Captain America 2 and taking him from World War II all the way to the future,
Right.
So obviously at some point the bad guy has to be the Soviets for when they reboot it. So...
Yeah.
Listen to our upcoming Rambo podcast where we talk about Russians.
Yes. That we recorded like 4 months ago.
Our timeline is also about as confusing.
We only let ourselves out of the freezer once a week to do a podcast.
Right.
Yes. I want to talk about the other super soldiers. Excuse me. I liked that the other super soldier. So in the movie, we find out that there's other super soldiers like Bucky, right? Other Winter Soldiers. But crazier. They seem not as controlled as Bucky. But then it's kind of like the thing, like the Zemo, the villain, that he's going to go revive. And then, again, spoiler warnings, he goes and murders him. And I kind of love that as a red herring, that you're kind of like, okay, well, Cap and Tony are going to make up, and they're going to fight the real villain, and things are going to be okay. And I kind of like that. Nope, that's not where we're going.
Yeah, they did a really good job setting that up.
Yeah, they did. I definitely wasn't expecting it. I thought for sure there was going to be a big fight with the other super soldiers, and then it didn't happen. And I was like, whoa, uh-oh.
Can I just, on that
Something's
note,
not right.
I didn't really get a chance to give my initial opinions on the movie.
Oh.
That's okay.
sorry.
That's okay.
There are 6
and I
of
told
us.
you this earlier, and you had asked me what I thought of the movie. I watched it Friday night with my brother. I had a visceral, emotional reaction to this movie. I went home mad. Like, I was disgusted going home. But not because it was a bad movie. I'm having a terrible time with this movie because it's not a bad movie. It's a good movie. But the choices and the decisions that Captain America made throughout this movie really rubbed me wrong throughout the entire movie. And the way that the ending played out with that video was like the icing on the cake. And so, yeah, I agree. That setup was perfect. Mm-hmm. But, like, I don't know how you... Like, I think everybody in here is a Captain America fan. I don't know how Captain America redeems himself. Like, I literally see him as the enemy now. Like, I don't... He was completely dishonorable.
I think that's interesting because I have very much a different opinion on that.
I do too.
I'm much more now. Again, in a realistic sense, if this was real and this is what had happened, to be like, yeah, screw that guy. But I think, knowing since we've seen the movie, we know that they've made mistakes. That the fact that they were totally wrong about everything that happened, I think, bolsters his case a little bit. That these assholes may have no idea what's going on. You know, they're like, well, we're going to go shoot Bucky because we saw grainy footage of him. So it's very much the react, you know, since it's more politicized possibly of what their involvement is going to be. It's much more, you need to react right now to this without necessarily. So, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I see where you're coming from.
I think that they did a really good job of kind of making you feel for both sides of the fight, personally. Mm-hmm. Like, I was going into this a Iron Man fan because I like Iron Man more than I like Captain America. And then they really, just going into it, I was like, well, I kind of understand where Captain America is coming from. He has kind of seen the United States military do the wrong thing. He has seen S.H.I.E.L.D. do the wrong thing, you know, by being infiltrated by Hydra. Who knows what's going to happen with this new task force they're putting together? He's already been kind of let down a couple times, you know. Mm-hmm. He's doing what he feels is best. Iron Man's doing what he feels is best, you know. And I think they really, I thought it might lean right or left on this issue, and I just kind of drove straight down the middle the whole time.
Yeah, if anything, I think that Captain America might have more fleshed out motivation than Tony Stark, actually.
I'd seriously have to push back against that. Here's the thing. Captain America's only rationalization for doing what he does is that he doesn't trust authority. That's it. That's all he's got. Mm-hmm. Now, he does have some evidence as far as Hydra's concerned, right? We're not dealing with Hydra. They've stopped Hydra, right? That scene when they're first given the Accords and they talk about it, and Vision does his thing, and then Rhodes does his thing. Those guys they're all absolutely correct. They were all spot on with that, right? We're not dealing with some private organization. You're dealing with the world and the will of the people of the world that says, look, you guys, you're not right in thinking that you can just go where you want and do what you want because you think it's good. And you're wrong to think that your opinion of what right is wrong trumps the world's opinion of what right and wrong is. So, and they're right to do that, right? The Accords might not have been set up good. I can sympathize with Cap when he said that there's got to be some changes, or he implied that, right? But for him just to disregard all the laws, international laws, beat up good cops, good soldiers, for no better reason than he was trying to protect his friend, Cap went down a very dark road.
I think he does, but I think the one thing that helps Cap's argument, though, a little bit, and this would be different in real life, but since it's a movie, we see it, Cap's right. Throughout the whole movie, he is correct in all of his assessment of what's happening. He's not wrong. He feels...
Oh, he is wrong, though. I disagree with that, because the only part of what he's right about is that Bucky didn't blow up that bomb.
Right.
Everything else that Bucky is charged with, he did do. He did those things.
True.
And he is so dangerous that he himself at the end of the movie is like, I can't be trusted. Mm-hmm. Which completely validates everybody else's reaction to Bucky. Because even the man himself is like, I can't be out on the street.
Well, see, but I don't think that's what Steve wanted. I don't think Steve wanted Bucky in the street. He wanted to bring Bucky in through the end of Winter Soldier to this.
He never did, though. He had
Well, they were
ample
looking.
opportunity throughout the movie to bring him in. When the helicopter crashed and they fell into the lake, he could have brought him back in, and instead he went on the run.
But at that point, he knows that something is up.
He suspects that something is up.
Enough to
Bucky-
the point where they want to straight up just kill Bucky and not go farther at that point.
Bucky tells Captain America that he did not do that. And for whatever reason, Captain America believes him at that point, right? And then that's when he kind of goes off with him and keeps protecting him, even though Bucky doesn't trust Captain America yet.
I understand all that, and I understand Captain America's wanting to protect his friend. But if Captain America had brought Bucky in, they wouldn't have shot him. If he would have came in with Captain America, nobody's going to shoot Bucky in front of Captain America. You know what I mean? But instead, like, they went to Germany, and they probably crippled some of them cops. I mean, I understand his concern and his, but it doesn't matter because sometimes there's more important factors at stake. And this is why I was so angry. This is why I'm such Team Cap, because the big picture is sometimes you have to make sacrifices. Sometimes you have to do things that aren't good or aren't palatable for a much better, much bigger end goal. And Cap was blind to that. He was stubborn. He decided that his ideal of what good and just meant trumped the world's. And that's not okay. That's where dictators come from. Absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And that's the fine line that Captain America was walking in this movie.
Well, I think, though, it's not necessarily... It depends on what you think of the UN being necessarily the will of the people, or those are also politicians, ambassadors appointed by politicians and things like that. We don't necessarily know, which actually, if you get a chance, ahead of this movie, there was a lot of small releases of their fake TV station that they've got and all this stuff. Kind of showed up in Ant-Man, where they were doing a bunch of kind of like lead up, like, what does the world think about Avengers? And I kind of like that they had kind of two different sides. There was a lot of people that are very much like, yeah, no, we should be letting them kind of do some of these things. But yeah, we've been talking though a lot this way. What's our thoughts down at the other? I guess you can't see because it's audio. I'm pointing down at the other end of our long couch with Ryan and Keith.
Well, I wanted to maybe touch on Iron Man's side of the thing. As compared to the comic book version of Civil War, Iron Man came off as kind of a fascist douchebag and that, but I thought his actions were a lot more justified in the movie than in the comic book. He was pretty much right in everything. I mean, at the beginning when the mother comes up and confronts him with the death of her son, that really I thought was his main driving force of wanting to ratify the Accords. So I just thought he came off more likable in the movie than he did in the comic book version of the story.
I definitely think he was likable in that sense, and I can definitely see where Robert, your opinion comes from in that respect. But at the same time, I think kind of the whole point is that both sides were blind, and I think that's sort of what the movie was playing at, is that neither side is necessarily wrong because, and I just kind of want to throw this out there really quickly. I did happen to notice at numerous points throughout the movie that if Captain America and or Iron Man had actually just said like one little thing, because at no point did Captain America ever say to Iron Man, dude, he didn't do it, until they were actually like fighting at that point, you know. But he had a chance earlier in the movie to say, you know, he didn't do it, or I think I might have a way to prove it if you just give me some time to do it. But no, he didn't do that. They just argued back and forth. So in a way, I think that, and I don't know if that's, I think it's kind of bad writing in that sense, but I don't know. I lean more towards Team Cap because I'm not a huge Iron Man fan. I like the character for the most part, but I think Captain America had a lot more going on than what you're giving him credit for in this story.
Well, I think
because I think it's more to it than just him protecting his friend, because the entire order was to shoot the guy on sight, right as soon as they pinned him for the crime, was shoot the guy on sight, you know. And I really don't care like whose side you're on. That's no better than being a vigilante right there. You know, that's kind of taking the law into your own hands. You know, you're skipping the due process and just killing this guy. And so I think Captain's very justified in wanting to protect him, and not just from the authorities, but from the Black Panther, who is hell-bent on killing him and is determined to kill him. You know, I mean, and what else are you supposed to do? Just stand in front of everybody and be like, guys, you know, just leave him alone. I'm pretty sure he didn't do what you think he did. No, those guys are going to keep shooting at Cap to get to Bucky. So he really doesn't have much of a choice but to follow through with his actions. He has to keep going. He has to.
I think the interesting thing is we're kind of talking. I agree that I'm more Team Cap, but what I liked about the movie is I didn't think Tony was completely wrong though either.
No.
I felt like he was right in a lot of regards, and Cap was wrong at times, and Cap was right at times, and Tony was wrong.
The movie did a good job of having you agree with both sides at the same time sometimes.
Right, like you kind of get it. Jake?
You know what the best part about this is? We are talking about why they're fighting. Unlike Batman versus Superman, it was so fucking stupid. It just made me mad the entire time. We're actually having a real conversation.
Yes.
Debating the merits of both sides' arguments in this.
Well, again, I think that helps.
At least there just wasn't a Martha, your mom's my mom too.
That's what I really wanted, because there's the point where he's got Bucky, and he's like, your mom's name's... What's his mom's
Sarah.
name? Your mom's name's Sarah. I just want to be like, your mom's name's Martha. And then Batman breaks in from the ceiling. Why'd you say that name?
I was almost going to say Martha to Keith, and I didn't know if he would get why I said it. But, oh, crap. We don't know how Keith felt about Batman versus Superman. We might be
Fuck
offending
that
him.
movie.
Well, there we go. So you would have fit right in on the last podcast.
The last, 3 podcasts.
That's true. That was time... Yeah, like we said, our timeline's
The next several podcasts to come. I would like to throw it there just real quick.
Sure.
To a point that Ryan made about shooting Bucky. When a threat is dangerous enough, it is perfectly justified to shoot on sight. The real life
I
example...
think that's a matter of moral opinion.
The example that I would give you is Osama bin Laden.
I don't think that was necessary.
Well, but
They had him dead to aim. They could have taken him in.
That's not the point. The point is
Yeah,
that
it is.
when
That is totally the point.
When
you
you
have
have
a gun, you're staring at an old man on dialysis. There was literally no reason to actually shoot him. There was maybe a sense of vengeance behind those bullets being fired, but at no point did I mean, did the guy stand up with a bunch of AK-47s and start firing at them or threaten to blow the place
He
up?
did have an AK-47 in his hand.
Was he firing at them?
He never had the chance.
Well, there you go.
No, I mean, they entered that room with. You're not understanding what that level of threat indicates. When you're dealing with somebody who is that violent and is that willing to kill, and not only kill, but to kill himself in order to kill, you don't hesitate. You don't think. You don't give them the chance. That's the kind of logic that you have to apply to somebody like the Winter Soldier, who could crush your skull one-handed. Right?
I don't think you have to apply that logic. I think, as a matter of survival, I can see why that logic might make sense on the battlefield.
I mean, the fact that
But
the fact that the
I don't
Winter
think I would
Soldier himself in the movie said that is a good strategy, knowing how dangerous he is.
Yeah,
I think really kind of defeats your argument.
Well, I
really
don't think you can say
think
that you
there's-
defeated the... You can have. I mean, there's a lot of people that there's a lot of different opinions on death penalty, not death penalty. I mean, some of that is going to come down to how you feel, which I think is interesting, again, that this movie is... We're talking about some of those issues, which is, again, I think makes it much more fascinating than some other big budget movies you have.
Recent movies.
Yeah. Which I like. Let's maybe change tracks for a little bit. We've been talking about this for a little bit. We'll kind of come back to it again. But we introduced a couple of new characters. We've talked a little bit now about Black Panther. So we're introduced to 2 main new characters in the movie, Spider-Man and Black Panther. Which Black Panther, we haven't seen. Spider-Man, we've had 2 series in the last decade. Well, a little bit more than a decade. What do we think about our introductions? Just real quick, what do we think of the characters? And then we'll talk about the introductions, because that was a point we were kind of talking about earlier. I love new Spider-Man. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel. I really love Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. I didn't even see the last series. I didn't watch The Amazing Spider-Man. And I wasn't sure. I was excited for more Spider-Man because I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man was a favorite of mine growing up, but I loved Spider-Man in this. Jake's raring to go.
He's already leaning in on the mic. He's like, no, I got it. I got it. I got something.
I love Spider-Man's aunt.
Yeah.
No, I really liked what they did with the new Spider-Man. Again, like you, learning that he's going to be a high schooler in that, I wasn't really quite sure. But I really like the direction they took the character. He feels a little more human at times, which I think Marvel's done a pretty good job with their characters of really giving a human element to them.
Yeah.
But there was two things I really didn't like about this movie. And one of them was Spider-Man's costume when he's in the action scenes just did not look as real as a lot of the other people's costumes.
Kind of looked like cheap CGI.
Yeah,
I thought so.
And it just I don't know why that maybe it's just again how that costume functions versus everybody else's. And the other thing I really hated, the big white location scene titles every time they go to a new location.
Yeah.
I was about to laugh every time one came up because it was like, I don't know what the effect is
I
supposed
feel
to be.
like there's a comedy movie that does this, and I can't put my finger on it, but it totally, completely took me out
You
of
know
the
what
movie.
it did to me is every time it popped up on the screen, it reminded me of that idiot who can't turn his damn caps locks off when you're chatting with him, and it's like you're yelling, "It's Cleveland! Oh my God!"
Welcome to Rome.
Or a bad YouTube video that doesn't know how to like title safe their videos.
Yep.
He's got a stronger emotional opinion about those titles than I have about the whole Cap Iron Man fight.
No, I
That's
think
kinda
they were
funny.
maybe the worst part of the movie
That's
because they were so
yeah.
odd and out of place.
I actually loved the title. I kind of love them.
It makes sense that you would.
Yeah.
We started talking about the new characters, and this
Yeah.
is probably my favorite derail we've ever had. So we're talking about titles now.
So Spider-Man, yeah. So let's. What are our thoughts on Spider-Man? We'll come back to Black Panther. Everybody else.
I like Spider-Man. I thought his intro was a bit awkward, but otherwise I loved what they did with him.
I thought he was great, but I also think they could have cut every Spider-Man scene out of the movie and it wouldn't have changed anything in the movie at all.
Yeah, I agree with that to a certain extent, but I did like his presence in it. I thought it was a little too weird, like having like this thing happening over in Europe and then Tony Stark's back in the U.S. talking to Spider-Man minutes later. So I thought that like maybe they should have done it like a little simpler even and just had like Tony Stark be like, well, I got someone. I'm not sure he's quite ready for this, but I don't know what else we're going to do. And then he could just show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They really stretched that 36-hour timeline, didn't they?
Oh, my God.
There's Matt and I were even talking about that right at the end of the movie. That's one of my issues with the movie a little bit. It's not a big one. I'm kind of okay with it, but the time is very off here and there of how long it takes people to do things. Like Cap and Bucky have a way head start to go there, but in the meanwhile, Tony's been with War Machine in the hospital and then went to the raft, but they're all kind of arriving and going, and it all kind of fits. But it's like, wait a minute, your timeline doesn't make a lot of sense. This should take you a lot longer.
Yeah.
Is War Machine a Avenger technically?
Yes.
Okay.
After Ultron.
After Ultron. Okay.
Yeah,
So
at the
he's
end of
no
Ultron.
longer an employee of the United States Air Force.
No, he's still.
He's
He's just able to cross over.
Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, because at the very end of Ultron, where they have the new Avengers, which is it was Vision, and he was part of that, so he is an Avenger now.
Okay.
At the end of that movie. Yeah.
As far as Spider-Man is concerned, I think there wasn't nearly enough Marissa Tomei in this movie. But no, I thought Spider-Man was pretty cool. I do have to agree, though. His introduction was pretty awkward, and I think they could have handled that a little better. Though I can kind of see why they probably just the whole idea that they just got the rights to be able to do that, and they're like, oh God, let's put him in this movie, please, God, let's put him in this movie.
I think that scene would have been better if it had been like at the beginning of the movie with like, that would have made it a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, now that you mentioned that probably does sound like it
Yeah.
made more sense.
Yeah, I think I could agree with that. But yeah, if you look at the introduction to Vision and the introduction to Black Panther, those were done much more smoothly.
Oh, yeah.
Than Spider-Man's truncated. Let's go get him.
I think I can definitely see what you guys are saying about it. Maybe probably would have worked better if it was earlier, but I didn't mind the intro. I liked it. I thought it made sense, at least to me when I was watching it.
I had made the point when we were on our way over here to Keith that I liked how, as far as his personality goes, he wasn't really so much making quips as it sounded like he was just
All right.
talking like just a dumb kid in battle, would talk, I guess, and not being snarky or being a dick or anything like that. But he's just making, casual conversation in the middle of battle.
Nervous
Well,
Yeah,
chat.
nervous chatter. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I thought in the other Spider-Man movies, even in the Sam Raimi movies, I thought the humor was just way too forced and cheesy in
Yeah.
those. His humor was a lot better handled in this movie.
I agree.
so far.
His
and
talking
natural
during the
awkwardness.
battles kind of reminded me of like a 13-year-old kid playing a video game online.
Right.
Not the swearing and all that kind of stuff. Like you said.
Right.
But
was
just kind of like,
racist.
oh, good, I'm shooting you, you know.
Yeah,
you have the right to remain silent.
yeah, I love that.
Yep.
I loved. Yeah.
I kind of feel like it's almost like he's trying to reassure himself too.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think that's where it's fun that we've got young Spider-Man. It makes sense in the universe too. It's kind of nice that everybody else has been doing this for a while now, and they're all close to the same age, and you've got this. So it's kind of nice to bring in somebody that's much younger than them and that has looked up to them already at this point, and then now he's kind of thrust in there, and I think that's an interesting dynamic with him. So I like that.
I also like that the movie itself points out how Marissa Tomei is way too hot to play Aunt May.
I love that Aunt May keeps getting younger and younger in each iteration.
I like hot Ant-Man.
Yes,
Yeah,
no,
I'm definitely a fan.
I'm okay with.
Clearly, we're going to have to do a podcast about Hot Aunt May.
We should just talk about Marissa Tomei for the rest of the time. Can we talk about all the time she's been nude in movies? Because I really want to talk about that. That's
Let's talk about the wrestler now.
yes. Let's talk about the rest.
I liked Hot Aunt May from the Sam Raimi trilogy. Go that gray.
You leave her alone. She is mine.
This podcast just got weird.
Yep. Oh, it always does.
Awkward.
So Black Panther, other character brought in. Definitely a stronger presence than Spider-Man. He's more interwoven into the story. Black Panther is one of my favorite comic book characters. I never really cared about him until the last couple of years when I've been reading more event stuff with them where he's been in there, and I really like that character, and I thought they did a really good job.
I'm really pumped for the Black Panther movie now.
Yeah. This made me very so I think in a lot of regards it succeeds that way because it really made me excited for Black Panther.
I think as far as the Black Panther is concerned, I'm really disappointed that it wasn't played by Marissa Tomei. No, I think the Black Panther was good. I really liked him. He was just a badass. Just watching him fight. I should just say the fight scenes in general were just
Yep.
amazing. I thought it very well choreographed.
Yeah, they got some of the John Wick stunt guys to work on this one.
Oh, that makes total sense then.
Yeah.
I'm the least comic book guy here. I only see the movies. And the only thing I know about the Black Panther is talking with you guys about it at other times. And so the movie's coming along, and I'm watching it. And the guy comes on the screen, I'm like, oh, that must be the Black Panther. Then I'm like, wait a minute. Is Black Panther black? Am I being racist right now?
That's the show, folks. It's been a good run.
happens in every single episode.
So we need to title this one. Is Black Panther black?
Panther black.
Like, legitimately. I mean,
my
a lot of
God.
comics came out, like, in the 60s and 70s, kind of had
Right.
racial overtones
Yeah.
and stuff. So I can see the Black Panther not being black coming from that generation.
I would like to point out that the Black Panther character predates the Black Panthers.
Yep.
It's
Really?
not inspired by the Black. Yeah. it
Okay.
predates-
Not by much.
Yeah.
They're pretty close, but no, Black Panther. And Black Panther was, I mean, that's been his story. King of a African country that's technologically advanced. In the 60s, Kirby was one of the creators.
I think you're cutting yourself short when you said that you're the least comic. Because you just watch the movies. Matt and Ryan don't even watch the movies. So you're in good company, sir.
I watched some of them. I just
Good
haven't seen
company.
all of them.
70s Incredible Hulk doesn't count, Ryan.
Hey, you shut the.
Oh my God, can we have an Avengers with 70s Incredible Hulk and their Thor and their Daredevil and Reb Brown Captain America?
There's got to be some way to make that crossover happen.
Yes. That's the Avengers I want. And the Japanese Spider-Man from the 70s with his
Oh, gosh,
giant
yes.
anime robot.
Yes.
That so needs to be a thing.
Oh, that TV show existed.
No, the TV
Yes,
show
it did.
existed, but I mean that
No, I know.
Avengers.
No, Matt and Jake gave me like a look. That there was a TV show in the 70s in Japan
I
of
just posted
Spider-Man.
recently a little GIF.
Yeah, he has a giant robot.
I hope that is the post-credit scenes from the Spider-Man movie. Like, they come back and he's fighting this robot.
Japanese Spider-Man was brought into the comic books recently, so
Yeah.
he's canon now.
Yep,
so.
yep.
Really?
Spider-Verse, the Spider-Verse thing
Wow.
they brought over 70s Japanese Spider-Man, and it was great. Yeah, any other thoughts on Black Panther? And then I think we'll get back to the movie proper. But yeah, I'm excited. I like the guy, Chadwick Boseman. I thought he did a great job. Sometimes, and I guess I don't know enough about the culture to be able to say if it was a good accent, but the accent never bothered me. His kind of generalized African accent.
Well, considering it's a mythical African country, I think.
Right. I think sometimes, though, when you see people try to do maybe more African accents, I think they overdo it sometimes in movies. Where it sounds,
Chappie.
yeah. Yeah, there's a few things that I don't, but I thought he did. But again, without knowing that much, but it never bothered me. I thought he sounded good, and yeah.
I was just going to say that after watching Chappie, you're talking about the Neil Blomkamp movie. I was to say, after watching Elysium, I came up with a rule for movies that you cannot have more than one character in a movie with an annoying accent.
We should almost come up with the Dirty Sprocket rules of successful movies.
Yes.
No giant big titles unless you're Derek.
I like the titles.
I liked Chappie, by the way. I liked that movie.
You know,
I like Chappie too. That's my
sidebar on Chappie. I liked Chappie, but I felt like they tried too hard with the whole kind of weird gang thing. And I think that's where it lost a lot of people, where Chappie, Derek apparently hasn't seen Chappie.
Nope.
He's looking at me very confused.
the weird gang thing was. Yeah, I'll go with you.
Yeah, they basically,
Didn't
it's kind of like RoboCop, except for they spend more time with this weird futuristic gang, which maybe that's what they're like in South Africa. I don't know.
I love
But
the
if
robot, though.
if you would have, I did too. But if you would have toned down those parts,
Yeah.
I think it would have been a great movie.
Didn't see Chappie.
And that's our Chappie podcast.
And we just did Chappie. Cool. Yeah. So Black Panther, awesome. Love the costume. Did a good job. So let's get back into the meat of things again. Sequel.
Kind of speaking of, smaller characters a little bit. It's really like Falcon leveled up in this movie. Like,
Yeah.
legitimately. Like, he was such a badass versus all the other movies he was ever in and all the stuff he was doing. Like, before I had, like, no thoughts, no care for that character. And now I'm like, holy shit. There goes the Falcon again. Let's see the Falcon do some cool shit.
I thought when you said, speaking of small characters, you were going to segue into talking about Ant-Man.
I know. I'm hoping she's going to be a big character.
No, I think that's one thing that the movie did well when we're talking about being a sequel is I like that they took Falcon as... He's not a huge part of Winter Soldier. He's definitely important in it. But I like that we continued on with the characterization of Falcon. I love that because in the comics he had a Falcon called Red Wing. And I love that it's a drone now, and he calls it Red Wing. And I was like, yep, that's the way you do that. That was very well done.
Makes more sense that he can actually talk to the bird.
And I like how Black Widow won't talk to the bird.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Speaking of, I gotta break. So I would just like to say all of the supporting characters, all of the heroes in this movie, I think these guys did an excellent job of showing their best faces. Like I don't think anybody was underplayed, with the exception of maybe Hawkeye a little bit, but given his such a small role, I think that's okay. But there was a scene in the beginning where and I just read that they're going to do this or it's in the works, but there was a scene in the beginning of the movie where Black Widow was thumping on some guys, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. She needs a movie. Like I'd never thought that way before. I'd never found her to be that compelling a person, but in that moment I was like, I see it now. She needs a movie. And maybe it was because of Winter Soldier, but if you take that kind of tone, that political thriller tone, and throw Black Widow into that, I think that would be a movie that people would watch.
I've always wanted to see a Black Widow movie ever since the second Avengers. Actually, ever since I saw that, I was like, I really think that they need to give her own movie. It'll probably never happen, but it should happen.
No, it's in the works.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh God, yes.
It is happening.
Yeah.
It's down the road, but
Yeah,
it is
probably
it is,
phase 4 or something like that.
Oh, I didn't know that. Because the
Yeah.
last thing I saw was Kevin Feige, the president that's doing all this, had said that he's like, well, I love the idea of a Black Widow movie, but I don't know if it's going to work out. So I guess that's new from that. That's awesome then. I'd
That is
love
definitely
to.
very awesome. It's kind of a surprise to me, I guess, as far as
Yeah.
Disney is concerned, because they've had some conflicts in the past with female characters and certain things. But
Yep. Not including her in the Toys for Ultron
yeah,
from the scene she's in.
yeah, because female characters don't sell toys as far as they're concerned. But yeah, a Black Widow movie, absolutely.
awesome.
They have Hawkeye be a supporting character in it. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That's what's great is you could throw in a lot of the other Avengers could like that's kind of becoming the thing anymore. Like Tony Stark is going to be in the Spider-Man movie and things like that. So you can bring in some of those guys. So it's great if you have a Black Widow movie. You can bring in maybe Steve again and maybe Falcon and Hawkeye. But it's her movie. No, that's awesome news. Then I hadn't heard that it was like actually in the works now, and that's fantastic. Because again, I think does a good job. I think we learn more about Sam. Black Widow, who was a main player in the last one. We see more about her. So I think in those regards, I think it did a very good job of continuing everybody's stories farther along, and I really like that. I think one thing I really like about Falcon, and I think it makes the most sense, is that Falcon just does what Steve wants. Whatever he's up to go do. But what I kind of like about that, I think it makes sense because he was recruited by Steve. He's not a superhero. He wasn't with all this other stuff. That he follows him. It'd maybe be different if he kind of had more of his own intro before that, but he's so connected that I think it makes sense. He's like, yep, I'm with Steve. I'm going to do what Steve wants, and I'm agreeing with him and going with him. Yeah, no, you're right. Falcon was... And I love some of the interplay between Bucky and Falcon. Like them in the car.
Yeah. Did you move your seat up?
No.
I love that after they get webbed. And it's like, you could have done that earlier.
I hate you.
I like too that, and you're right that he was more of a badass in this movie, but at the same time, he was more of a scout type player, and I think that role suits that character. And I don't know about in the comics necessarily, but the way that they've created him in the cinematic universe, I think he's best played as in that role as a scout. But yeah, he was definitely more of a badass. But I liked that he was a lot of times behind the lines, being eyes on the ground, and that made a lot of sense to me.
And I don't know if it's because we've seen all the cool stuff like
He's
Iron
also
Man.
black. Did you notice that?
Really? I didn't want to be racist, but I was going to play that on the safe side. No,
But he had a white bird.
He did.
All the cool things we've seen Iron Man's suit do, it kind of maybe set us up to allow the Falcon's costume to do more and not feel like it's
But it makes sense.
too
He's
much.
an Avenger, so
Yeah.
Tony... they established in Age of Ultron that he kind of soups everybody up, so it makes sense he would probably soup up Falcon.
It kind of bothers me though that those wings fold up so neatly into that little bitty backpack. I would like there to be a little bit of... I don't like that so much because they're disappearing.
Iron Man has a watch that turns into an entire suit. But
I
black
agree with that. It didn't turn
Avenger.
into an entire suit.
This is his hand.
It's just
Okay,
his hand.
fair enough, fair
but
enough.
I agree. That was a bit, and then when he stuck his finger in the button and that became his suit,
I
that
loved
was too much. Also,
I loved it.
you know the best Iron Man part in this entire movie?
Yeah.
I loved it when they made the fake Tony Stark younger. Like they did such a good,
they did a
incredible
good job of that.
Like I'm sure it's a body double and they just put his face on there.
Right.
But that was so cool.
That
And like that's
looked-
the best I've ever seen.
From what I understand, I think it was. I haven't seen it myself, of course, because I don't watch Marvel movies apparently. But in Ant-Man, they did a very good job with
Michael Douglas.
as well.
sure did.
No, it's... Man, that stuff's getting good because, yeah, he looked like young Robert. He looked exactly like you if you go watch his old movies. It's like, holy cow, what they can do now.
I know, right?
Technology.
Technology. No, I liked... I think... Because we're getting close to when we need to start coming up with sequels. So I think let's kind of round table it around for the next few minutes. And let's talk about how successful this movie is as a sequel to Winter Soldier, and maybe how successful it is as a sequel to the Marvel Universe. I'll go ahead and start, unless Jake was leaning in.
I just want Robert to go last because he has notes.
All right.
I'll go last.
Robert can go last.
And that way you can just end the podcast after the rest of the stuff.
Right. And we're done. Bam.
I feel like I'm being picked on.
I think this is a very successful sequel to Winter Soldier. I think it takes what happened there to its next logical place. We learn more about Steve. Even though there is so much other going on, it's maybe not as much his movie as Winter Soldier was, but I think he was still well represented within the movie. His characters were well represented from before, so I think it pushes the story forward into new directions. We learn more information from the last movie, so I think very good sequel to that, and I think I'm very excited as a sequel as far as the Marvel Universe. That we kind of have in the comics. What happened after the end of Civil War as well is there was the Secret Avengers for a long time, that they were basically the heroes that were on Cap's side, that they continued being Avengers, but they had to do it on the down low and things like that. And I'm kind of excited because I could see some of that kind of coming up in the next few movies, that's actually going to be kind of a plot point, that some of them are not sanctioned. You've got your sanctioned ones and then your non-sanctioned ones. So I think it did a good job of... We have new stories to tell, which I think is the keys. We didn't necessarily rehash things that already happened. I feel like we went some new directions, which makes me excited, especially with this many movies and this big of a thing, that I think being able to find a way to kind of do something a little bit new, or at least not necessarily new, but new to this universe, because it is based on a lot of other things. But so yeah, I think a successful sequel on both fronts. Who wants to go next? All right, Keith.
I thought it was successful in the overall Marvel universe, cinematic universe. The one thing I really liked, for me, it fixed a plot hole that I had between Iron Man 3 and Age of Ultron. Because at the end of Iron Man 3, he blows up all of his suits and it looks like he was done being Iron Man, but by the time Age of Ultron comes along, he's Iron Man again. But he actually explains in this movie why he's still being Iron Man. I love that.
You're right. That was a really great moment of kind of getting a little bit, because we even talked about that. Like, after we watched Iron Man 3 in our last run through, it's like, and he blows up everything, but then he's Iron Man again. Yeah. So I agree. That was a nice nod to kind of that little hole that there is.
I haven't seen Winter Soldier, obviously. So
how good of a sequel to the first Captain
that's
America?
That's exactly what I was just gonna say.
No, you don't let that stop you.
See, my enjoyment of the first Captain America was completely mired by the shitty 3D, because it was one of the first 3D movies that I went and saw, and Keith and I went and saw together, and I was just horribly, horribly upset by it. But at the same time, I didn't think that the first one was bad. But by comparison, this is still a way, way better movie. However, I would like to say that as far as the overall universe is concerned, I don't even know that I can consider it necessarily a sequel to Captain America, as I would consider just a continuing expansion of the universe. Because I don't know if, since they're all so interconnected now, I can't really say, it's just a sequel to Captain America, because like you said before, it's Avengers 2.5.
Right.
It really is this kind of an expansion, and that's how they all are now. It's all so intertwined that it's just all one big sequel to another sequel to another sequel. So, but as far as I'm concerned, really great movie, really well done. There was a few very minor flaws, but nothing that I couldn't get past. So,
Audio podcast.
I thought it was very successful. Kind of in the same place where it's not quite a sequel. It's more like a Marvel movie with kind of Captain America centric. So,
I think, and I'm trying. It's hard. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody who didn't just binge watch all these movies last weekend. But I think it could be kind of a confusing sequel if you were only a Captain America fan and maybe you hadn't seen Avengers or some of those other movies. Kind of like how I skipped the second Captain America and only watched it because this was coming up, and really kind of answered a lot of questions I even had for the last Avengers movie, I think it could be kind of confusing just because with all these Marvel movies, they introduce all these other characters. Like, if you've never saw Ant-Man before, that'd be kind of confusing. Like, who's this guy? Again, it's in pop culture now. You should have probably saw the trailers. But I think it was a good sequel directly to Captain America and what his character's motivations are, and that relationship with Bucky, and also a pretty good sequel to the last Avengers movie.
I think you're right. That is true. And I kind of appreciate that, but that I am a person that watches all of the movies that they have just kind of dispensed with, like, oh yeah, you either know or you don't. Yeah, like Scott. Hey, Ant-Man's here. You didn't watch Ant-Man? Go to hell. He's here.
And that's kind of what I had with the Falcon in the last Avengers movie, because I hadn't seen Winter Soldier, so I was a little confused about where this guy came from.
Yeah.
So
no, I could see that. It definitely. It is presupposing you have a lot of information, which I guess makes sense that there are people out there who don't watch every movie. So I could see that.
Ryan.
Hey, you know what?
It was funny. Ryan's like, I think I got most everything. He's like, oh yeah, and then Shield was Hydra. Wait, Shield was Hydra?
Yeah, well, whatever. As far as I'm concerned, I'm actually not a big fan of the expansive universes like that, to be honest. That's one of the reasons why I haven't seen those movies, because I got kind of burnt out on the Marvel universe after a while, so it's just like, fuck it, I don't want to watch these movies. So yeah, I skipped out on quite a few. Basically just the ones that Keith drags me to are the ones that I go and see anymore.
You like them, and
I do like them when I see them, but it's just like I get tired of it when they continue to expand. I got really annoyed with it with like The Matrix. Because I thought the 3 movies, great, but then we have the video game, then you have the comic books, and then there's all these different ways that they're expanding the story, and they're supposed to be canon, and I hate that, because it's like, well, now I have to invest in both the PlayStation and a Nintendo, or now I have to invest in 8 movies as opposed to just watching one. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, every movie should be its own standalone enjoyment. You shouldn't have to go and see 8 other movies just to enjoy one.
So that's everybody's thoughts. Ready to move on?
I actually did have, before Robert starts, I did have one quick thought about what Ryan was saying. I think the one reason I think where I kind of enjoy that they do this, that they include a lot of the stuff, is it feels like comic books to me. That it's very much comic books. Like you get the main comic books here. If you're reading Avengers, you can read Avengers and you got their stories, but sometimes you're like, wait a minute, Spider-Man was Dr. Octopus for a while? But I'm just reading the Avengers comic book. I don't know that. But if you're reading Spider-Man, oh, there's this whole other story happening. He shows up here. It's like, why is he different? So I get that, but that's what I love about comic books, though, a little bit. So.
I think I can kind of agree to a certain extent that it does make me want to see the other movies. But I feel there's something about backtracking that really annoys me. I think that's the real reason why it annoys me so much is that, well, now I have to go back and watch these other ones.
Yep.
Because now I feel obligated to watch them, and I know that's going to eat away at me while I'm watching it. So I might not get as much enjoyment. Might not.
Sure.
It's possible I'll watch it and be completely blown away, but it's still, there's that obsessive compulsive side of me that's just gnawing away at my brain. Like, oh my God, I can't believe they did it this way. And
I think that's valid. All right, Robert. Sequel.
I'm sorry, what were we talking about?
Marissa Tomei.
It's your show.
Yeah.
Don't disappoint. Everybody's been waiting.
Well, no, I kind of agree with a lot of what you guys had said about it being a little bit confusing. I think it's kind of a good sequel to Captain America. I think, and this is I'm kind of conflicted on this part. I really like that they had all these other characters. One other quick point that I want to bring up. You called it. We've called it a couple times Avengers 2.5. They were calling Captain America Winter Soldier Avengers 1.5, right? So
No, the first one.
Huh?
The first Avenger, Captain America, wasn't it? Didn't they
Captain
call
America
that
Winter
one?
Soldier, they were calling that Avengers 1.5.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because they were introducing Falcon and Black Widow was going to be in there, right? So, I mean, this is a continuation of what they started. And so I'm okay with that. But what worries me about it is that it's getting to the point now where the Captain America sequels are relying so heavily on a battery of other characters. So, as successful as this movie is, we can assume there's going to be Captain America 4. Where do they go from here? Right? I mean, that's kind of worrisome. So, and you kind of follow the first Captain. I think, because I'm kind of with Jake. I know you really liked it. I didn't care for the first Captain America so much. I thought it was rather slow. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good as the other movies that were coming out at that time, right? And I think a lot of people felt that way, and I think that's kind of where they shifted in Captain America: Winter Soldier when they brought in some help, and that was really successful for them. And so they did that again in this movie, and this is really successful for them, which is okay, right? So, I mean, I worry about that. I have problems with it as a sequel because I really, and I know you guys all disagree with me on this, but I think this movie really leaves off with a disgraced Captain America. I know he thought he was doing right? But good intentions aren't enough, right? And maybe this, again, comes from my military background, but good intentions can really do great harm if it's not tempered by oversight, right? So he broke a lot of laws, and he hurt a lot of good people. I mean, I think at one point, when him and Bucky were trying to fight Bucky out of that, Bucky took a battering ram to a couple of soldiers. That would cripple somebody.
But it was awesome.
But it was kind of awesome. Another time, Captain America bounced his shield off and hit one of them cops in the head, and even after that, it had enough ricochet momentum to stick itself in the wall. That guy's pretty much screwed up for a while.
We almost need to have the sequel to this be just like the victims ward of all these people.
The point, I don't want to drag it, but the point I'm trying to make is Captain America hurt a lot of good people. Remember, these weren't Hydra guys. These were cops that were doing their job to protect their country, to protect their families, and Cap beat the shit out of them, right? And he broke laws in the process. So he really did disgrace himself in this movie. Maybe for reasons that are good and we can latch on to, but I think that's not a good way to end a sequel. Also, the thing about Cap's, he's stubborn, and he's got he's too arrogant. And this movie did nothing to help him rise above that. If anything, he became more polarized in those beliefs. And I think that that's not a good way to end a sequel. So, but other than that, it really was a good sequel. I mean, especially as far as moving the DC or fuck DC, the Marvel Cinematic Universe ahead. And one of the people that we didn't mention I'd really like to talk about is Vision. Mm-hmm. I loved how they I want to see Vision as a more central character in the coming stories. So I really hope that he takes a front row seat, because his arguments throughout the movie in favor of Iron Man's side were so based in
It was very logic. It was all
very
logic.
and reason, but not just that. It was also based in heart. He was not trying to. He didn't want to fight Cap. He was trying to move Cap. And I really felt compelled by that character. So
I agree. I think that's a very good point, actually. And you know what? I do have to point out, we didn't really touch on Vision or Scarlet Witch at all, as a matter of fact. And that particular relationship right there, I thought was a very interesting dynamic.
he loves her, and then she's going to burn his face off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope they don't go the comics on that one.
I want to say one thing about that Robert brought up about the fighting and the like obviously to people in the real world watching it, the Winter Soldier did kind of horribly maim a lot of people. This is a problem though with movies in general, because screenwriters and movie makers seem to believe that humans can survive a wide array of things that are not really possible. Like, people in movies all the time just shrug off like getting shot in the shoulder or something. It's like, no, you're messed up. You need to go to a hospital now. You don't just like bandage that up and go on by your way.
Taking a 12-pound shield to your face.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just think that like that's kind of like almost a problem with movies in general a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like with the universe that we've created and what we've seen other characters shrug off, I mean, like Black Widow and Hawkeye, who are not super powered, and some of the stuff, I feel like I understand, like, yeah, watching it as a real person, like, yeah, if you got hit with that, you probably broke your spine, but I think in the Marvel terms of with this, I think they're all fine. Like, they got beat up some, but I don't think any of them were horribly maimed. As far as within the logic of the universe, it's not real logic, because, yeah, all those dudes are super messed up.
Yeah, you can't overthink it too much. I mean,
I see what I mean. I get what you're saying.
Well, I mean, okay, let's assume none of them were crippled or maimed. That's not the point. The point is that these were people that were doing a job. They're not Hydra. They're not bad guys. They're not some secret, organization hell-bent on taking over the world. These were guys that were defending their country, that were obeying the law, who were duly exercising power appointed to them to stop a potential nuclear bomb, as what's his name put it, and Captain America beat him up.
Yeah.
Right? The good guy beat up the good guys. And so, as far as I'm concerned, by the time this movie ended, especially with what he pulled with Tony in that video and the knowledge that he had about what Bucky did to his parents, he is disgraced as far as I'm concerned. And I don't think I don't think that's a good way to end a sequel. However, these guys have been very deliberate, the movie guys, about how the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going. So I tend to have faith that this is going to be resolved in a satisfactory way down the
they'll
road.
redeem him. Yeah.
I have 3 points, Robert style.
All right.
Or Rick Perry if I forget one of them.
Now I'm going to do the same thing y'all did to me with Star Wars, and I'm going to wait till you get to point 2, and then I'm going to interrupt you so you can get point 3.
Okay. So first of all, one of our heroes did get hurt. Spider-Man got a black eye.
It's true.
So
Point number 2, more serious. I think Captain America did almost everything he could, with the exception of throwing a shield in that guy's head. But he was saving those cops left and right, picking them up, making sure they didn't fall to their death off the balcony and stuff of that nature.
That's a good point, actually.
And I mean, people did get hurt, but he was having to do what he had to protect himself and to protect Bucky, which his moral compass thinks is the right thing to do. And point 3, and this is going to totally rehash your whole Captain America disgraceful thing. I think it just comes down to kind of your moral compass, what you think is right. Albert Einstein once said, a blind respect for authority is the greatest enemy of truth. And so if you're just going to blindly accept that the large oversight of government's going to be able to make the best decisions for you, just giving away all of your rights. Because once you give away power, it's really hard to get it back. And I think he's just experienced that kind of time and time again, and he kind of knows that, and that's in his character. I think he's more of a rebel going into this with a good cause versus going rogue and just kind of doing his own thing,
I think that ties in nicely because I think we need to start going into our last segment here, which is sequels that we want to see. And what you guys were talking about ties into what I want to see as a sequel. So right off the bat, my sequel to Civil War. What I really, really want to see, and I think this is an important thing to the character of Captain America, which I think a lot of times people that don't read the comics think of Captain America as yay America all the time, that he is very kind of he does what the government tells him, which is not the character. Repeatedly throughout the comics, Captain America has quit being Captain America because he disagrees with things. So I think this fits in with his character, but I think that's what would be very interesting to me as a sequel to this movie. Specifically, not talking Avengers, talking Captain America. I would like to see him having given up the mantle of Captain America because I think we disagree about some of the things, but I think you're right. I mean, he did do some very questionable things to get the end result that he thought was right. And I think that's going to weigh on the character, that he did cross some lines.
Well, he gives up the shield at the very end.
Right, and I think that's important. So I think what would be very interesting to me in the next Captain America movie is him kind of having to deal with that of he shouldn't be Captain America again, probably for a while, because of, right or wrong, he did break the law. He shouldn't be necessarily Captain America. He needs to be Steve Rogers for a while, which I think would be a very interesting movie, is him kind of finding himself as, who is Steve? Not who's Captain America, who is Steve. So that's where I'd be very excited. When they've done that before in the comics. So that's where I would like to see that go.
Was giving up the shield really a big deal? Because he's now in the one country in the world that has all that metal. It was almost like this.
He's like, he.
He's like, sure. Yeah.
I took that, just real quick, I took that less as him giving up the mantle of Captain America and more as I don't want to say peace offering. I think that's too strong a word, but I think that was a way for him to concede in some small way that Stark was right.
Yeah.
At least in part.
Yeah.
And that he was wrong. He did wrong Stark. And so when Stark said that shield was my father's, I think that's why he dropped that shield.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
But I also think him thinking in the back of his mind, just like, well, fuck you, I'll go make me one in Wakanda, and then it'll be mine.
Well, I did not know that Black Panther
You
did not
couldn't
want
see
to
it,
kill
but he was
Bucky
giving everyone
anymore.
the finger.
He was not aware at that point that he's like, oh shit, I still have Black Panther to deal with, because
He never
that's
knew-
all happening elsewhere.
Well, he never knew that Black Panther's on the island anyway. So
Right. So
as soon
I
as
mean, he didn't necessarily know when he's giving up the shield that I'm going to go to Wakanda and hang out.
Well, that's true, but
But
it's
that's
funny-
hilarious though
It's
that
funny
he's.
to think about.
It is hilarious though that he's like, I've got 5 shields for different things.
He's like Iron Man, who has 50 different things. He's got all of his different
shield
shields.
mark.
Shield for every occasion.
he's already got well, we had this conversation.
He's got one for sledding. He's got one.
one for sledding. Sledding.
So
Just have Cap steal the Iron Patriot suit, and then he wears that from now on.
yeah.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, so that's what I would like to see for.
Wakeboarding shield.
Yes.
Wait, did you mean War Machine? Because that's way cooler.
So yes, that would be my sequel to this. I'd like to see Steve. Honestly, because again, I think part of it, I really like Iron Man 3 a lot, maybe more than some other people. But that's one of the things I liked about Iron Man 3. It was kind of about Tony, figuring out things about Tony. I would kind of like to see that with Steve. Yeah, he's always been. I mean, really, he was a kid and then he became Captain America. So I'd be curious to see his journey to figure some of this stuff out. My sequel to, so if we back up, what I would have done from Winter Soldier, though, I would not have done Civil War, which I'm glad they did. It was totally awesome. But if I was directly going from a sequel from Winter Soldier, I would have gone, I think, with their original idea, which was a joke. When they announced Phase 3, they originally had Captain America, the Serpent Society, right? And then it's kind of a joke later on. He's like, I don't like that title. I think it should be this. And Kevin Feige changes it to Civil War, right? But I've heard some rumors that Serpent Society was supposed to be the next movie, that they kind of decided later on to do Civil War. I think, and I would be wrong because I think Civil War is badass and was a great way to do it. If I was writing it, though, I would have done Serpent Society. I would have directly followed up Cap trying to find Bucky. It would not have been an Avengers movie. We would have dealt more directly with that, and I think it would have been him. Even a little bit still. My sequel to this, I think I would have put more of that in there too. Some of the stuff I really liked about Winter Soldier was Steve acclimating. I would have liked to, if we would have spent more time with just Steve, I would have liked more of that. So I think that would have been my sequel to Winter Soldier, was more of a straight up sequel, him learning more about the 20th century, all that kind of jazz. So those are my sequels. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay, Keith.
Well, I actually kind of agree with. I would like to see Steve not be Captain America anymore. But on the same hand, maybe the government, they now choose somebody else to become Captain America, kind of like U.S. agent from the comic books.
Yeah.
Who in the comics he turned out to be a complete psychopath, and we could have him Steve basically has to reclaim the mantle of Captain America from
That's
somebody.
great.
That would be a great lead up too for him. You know, the idea of discovering himself too is having to take on the shadow of what he used to be, basically.
That's great. I would love that. I'm amending my sequel.
And I'd like to see the Red Skull come back too.
Yes.
Yes.
Who's probably not dead.
No, I'm pretty sure he got
'Cause-
transported somewhere.
yeah,
not
he was
disintegrated,
teleported.
So.
So, no, that's awesome. I completely agree. That would have been awesome.
I think my sequel would be Captain America 4, Marissa Tomei. I love you.
Sure, she listens to this podcast all the time.
I love you. Anyway,
I'm sorry, Marissa told me. I'm sorry.
no, I agree. I think those would also be very good movies. I would just like to. I would like to think that the next Captain America would be more of a standalone movie. I think that's my only real criteria.
Yeah.
Because I know I hate to beat a dead horse, but that's what I do best. I still.
Is that on your business card?
Skills.
Yeah, I know, right? I just think that the mark of good screenwriting and good filmmaking is, unless you know for a fact that there's an ongoing story that's going to continue through, like Star Wars. You know that that's a trilogy and that it has a set number of movies and that the story is going to go from movie to movie. And one would think that would be the same with Captain America, but instead it's this big expanded universe. I think the mark of a good screenwriter and a good filmmaker is being able to make each movie speak for itself and stand on its own, regardless of what characters are in it. You should still be able to figure out who they are at some point without having to continuously ask yourself, well, who the hell are these people and why are they doing these things? If those things are so important and these movies are so important, because they don't make them just for the Marvel fans, they're making them for the millions, hundreds of millions of people out there who are watching these movies, because that's who's making them the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. That's very important to me, that the movies can stand on their own. So the fourth Captain America movie for me would just have to be a standalone movie.
Okay.
I don't mind cameos, but
By Marissa Tomei.
by Marissa Tomei, I love you.
So my
Here we go.
it's a lot of pressure. In fact, I think Robert should probably go first. I made the mistake one time of going before Robert.
Captain America versus IRS.
Yep. No, legitimately.
Versus
Ash.
versus Ash.
Yep. Yep.
I was going to get to that. No,
She's teleporting
Do you
you to
want me to go
Marvel.
before you?
no, that's fine.
Okay.
Honestly, I liked this movie, and I thought it was a great sequel to The Winter Soldier. There wasn't a lot of loose ends, but what I would like to have seen is when all the Avengers first get together, I'd be like, what the fuck happened? Shield's gone. Shield was Hydra, and just have a little bit of time talking about that.
Spend 5 minutes recapping.
Yeah. And then my sequel to this would be that Thor and Hulk show up, and they're like, oh shit, we have to pick a team. And they basically battle each other this whole entire time. Because they're like, obviously, Thor's like, well, obviously we're going with Captain America. And then Bruce Banner's like, well, no.
He's science
Tony
bro.
Stark is a man of science. We got to follow him. And they just destroy cities left and right, which, again, makes more people in favor of the task force for Iron Man.
Yeah, they basically rehash Civil War between them.
I would love a scene in the next movie that we have them that they just need to show and be like, what the shit did you guys do when we were gone? Like, what the hell?
You know what? That should have been the secret scene at the end of the movie.
Thor, like,
Is
teleports
Thor
down.
and Hulk showing.
We need to assemble the Avengers. Where is everybody?
And it literally has just been a one-hit, fight. Hulk just bam, and it's over.
Thor says Avengers
to
assemble and
credits.
Spider-Man shows up.
Yeah.
What?
Who are you?
Ant-Man. Beg your pardon?
Come on, guys.
I guess for me it would be just maybe if sequel just have a more Captain America centric movie. Maybe he goes like hunting down remnants of Hydra or something.
Sure. Which, based on, again, not that people watched it a lot, but Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra's still around in the universe that exists.
Actually,
Hydra's
they just
not
took
gone.
Hydra out like off screen on an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Wait.
What?
Yeah.
I'm a couple episodes back.
Spoilers.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Oh.
While they're having their main storyline with the Inhumans,
Yeah.
in the background they like order all these strikes against all the Hydra bases. Coulson's just watching the screen while all these blips are going off. Says, "Well, there goes Hydra,"
Holy crap.
and that was it.
Never mind.
Yeah.
So Keith, we have one rule in this podcast, and we're allowed to do spoilers for our fans, but we're not allowed to spoil for each other.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was like
I
three
mean,
episodes
Hydra's
back.
fine.
damn it.
Everybody's fine. They're still
Everybody's
alive.
fine.
Yeah.
I have one addendum to Matt's, where Captain America goes to continue to fight Hydra, and Hydra is the task force that Iron Man has joined.
Which
You're a
is...
dick face.
That's actually what kind of happens in the comics of Civil War. Not directly after, but Secret Invasion happens after Civil War. Everybody's split, and then Norman Osborn becomes in charge of the Avengers. Because that's a good idea.
he is the Iron Patriot,
Yep, he was the Iron Patriot in the comics.
not Iron Man.
War Machine?
Iron Patriot.
Iron Patriot, yeah. They completely changed up Iron Patriot in Iron Man 3. Yep, Norman was him for a while in the comics. And then Stark took his suit back very easily. He's like, that's my suit. And just like turns it off. All right, Robert. Or Matt, did you have anything else to add on yours?
No.
Okay. All right, Robert.
So
Oh, here we go.
Hang on.
no, actually, mine's gonna be
Page 3.
Yeah, mine's gonna be kind of short. I really don't have a whole sequel idea because, as much as I hate to admit it, this was a really good sequel, right? The fact that I had such an emotionally strong reaction is a sign that it was a good movie, right? The fact that I was on Iron Man's side and he lost is irrelevant because it's a Captain America movie, right? But because of the no, just I know you guys disagree with me, but bear with me for a minute.
Okay.
Here's what I want to see, and this should be probably broken up in a couple of movies, and I kind of like your idea with what you were saying, but first
he
of
was
all,
pointing at Keith.
I'm sorry, yeah, Keith.
I really thought you were pointing at
We're
me
not
through
on
Keith.
camera. We're not on
Audio
camera.
podcast.
I'm sorry, Keith. Yeah, we're yeah. Keith, your idea was excellent. I think the Cap and Iron Man need to have a rematch, and I think the Cap needs to beat the shit out of Iron Man. Or I mean, Iron Man needs to beat the shit out of Cap. I think he needs to beat him handily. And one of the reasons that I say that is because in the Civil War comic books, the first time they threw down, he did beat him handily.
Beat the shit out of him.
And then Cap kind of outsmarted him later and beat him that way. And then even in this movie, it's pretty clear to me, I think, that they weakened Iron Man throughout the course of the battle, so that by the time he got to Iron Man, or I mean Captain America and Bucky, that he was at a severe disadvantage. So, I think that if Iron Man and Captain America fought again, and Iron Man beat him and more or less humiliated him on the battlefield, that would force him into that darkest hour moment that heroes have to go through in order to advance their character, their story. And I think that could help him come to the realization that he cannot be so stubborn, that he has to have faith in things greater than himself. Because as much as Captain America is a good guy, and we know that sooner or later that Captain America is going to try to make good decisions, you cannot have that kind of power go unchecked. You just cannot. It's imperative that somebody be there to say, no, you're going too far. You need to come back.
Are you saying that with great power comes great responsibility?
That's exactly what I'm saying. But I think that's a lesson that Captain America hasn't had to learn yet in his movies, and I think he needs to. And I think a battle with Iron Man in which he loses could help him come to that.
Do you know how that fight starts? Iron Man has some really witty dialogue about how, well, of course, two guys are going to beat one. I would have beat you single-handedly if it was just me versus you.
Yeah.
Because there was the two of them, so he did take on two of them.
Yeah. The other thing is and because Iron Man is a very important part of this movie too. I mean, this is in some ways Iron Man 3.5.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he's definitely got room to grow. He's made some mistakes. I mean, you guys are right. He wasn't entirely correct. And one of the things that I would like to see is I would like him to come to the realization, and I'd like him to find out where Winter Soldier is. But what I'd like him to do is realize through some means, I don't know if it's through the fight with Captain America or some other way, that he has to destroy Winter Soldier, but not by killing the man, but by healing him, right?
Sure.
If he heals Bucky, gives him his arm back, helps him get Hydra out of his head, he's destroyed Winter Soldier, he's healed Bucky, he heals himself that way.
Good.
That's an excellent way for that character to move forward. And I think through that happening and a fight with Captain America in which he wins, they both can save face and come back together somehow, and that would lead us nicely into Infinity War.
Right.
I definitely have to agree, and I want to say that, and I mentioned this to Keith earlier too, that I was actually really disappointed that nobody died, and to be perfectly honest with you, I kind of wish that Captain, even though I am Team Cap, I still think he should have lost that final battle, because I think as far as the emotional arc of the story goes,
Sure.
it just seemed like he should have lost. And if he didn't lose, then Iron Man should have died. That there should have been some sort of loss. I mean, it's Civil War, so there should have been some sort of loss there. And I don't feel like there was.
I mean, losing your legs isn't a big deal at all.
I kind of would have liked.
Yeah, but he's getting them back.
I kind of would have liked the idea of Captain America losing that fight, but winning the maybe the moral, or winning the fight. And in
I
this
would
case,
much
in
rather
my
see
opinion,
them find the middle ground where they can both come together. But I think one of them should have lost.
Yeah.
Either
Well-
way, like
well,
big
Iron-
time.
Iron Man
I mean,
lost.
yeah. I mean, Iron Man should have lost, but I think Captain America should have lost.
I don't think if Iron Man
He should be willing to
directly-
sacrifice himself for the cause. If he's really that adamant about it,
I
he
think
should die for it.
It's a lot less black and white. I don't feel like
I don't
either
think
side
Iron Man
really
lost.
won or lost.
no,
Iron Man
because
lost
in
the
this case-
fight,
in
but-
this case, Captain America won the fight, but he lost the moral argument. As far as I'm concerned, he lost the moral argument.
Well, and he's on the run. I mean, Tony,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, Tony kind of gets his way. They have the Accords, they have the
Right.
oversight. I
Through the whole movie, it's weird. It's really hard to follow because our bad guy essentially is Tony Stark, but Tony Stark is the only one obeying the law throughout this movie. So yeah, I think Captain America won the fight. He lost the moral argument.
And see,
he lost the high ground morally.
I still just can't get behind you that he's wrong, and maybe that's just this small rebellious part of me that I don't know why, but I just feel like you should challenge authority. You shouldn't just automatically succumb to it.
But Jake,
You know what
he's
I mean?
not challenging authority. He's rejecting it.
Okay, fair enough.
Right? The Accords aren't saying you can't be Captain America anymore and you can't do what you think is right. All the Accords are saying is you can't go off willy-nilly wherever you want to.
But they do bring up the point that what happens when they tell us to go to a battle we don't want to do.
That's the downside, but there's no way around that. And something that I would like to point out too is, I mean, if you're familiar with the UN at all, the UN very rarely ever goes off and does military missions.
Until Hydra takes them over.
Well, I mean, but that's the thing. You can play what if games in all day long. What Team Iron Man was trying to get across to Captain America, and I think rightly so, is that yeah, bad things could happen. But doing it the way that we're doing it now, bad things are happening.
Right. I think my point to that a little bit, where we're saying that Cap doesn't have oversight. I think the way I always kind of read it was he does think he has It's honestly a little bit of the Justice League idea, a little bit, that Batman is the oversight of the Justice League, and I kind of feel like that was maybe Steve's point a little bit of the Avengers is. We're the Avengers. We, police ourselves. So, I mean, you have these arguments and things like that.
Yeah, but that's the thing is that this is a conversation that's going on within the Avengers, and the outside world is saying no. If you were only ever having these battles in your backyard, where the only people that were ever affected and wounded by the aftermath were you, then that would be one thing. But it's not. You're going to countries that don't necessarily want you there.
Right.
So if you're going to have this in our backyard, we have a say.
Team America World Police.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, kind of. But okay, so we can have this argument for days. But
Yeah.
a couple small more points that I want to make.
Okay.
I think the raft was severely underused that's the prison.
Okay.
Was severely underused in this. I would like to have seen, for example, the Abomination.
Yeah, because I think he's there.
He should have been. We should have seen more than just Team Iron or Team Cap locked up. You know. But yeah, I mean, maybe we could presume that maybe what's his name from Iron Man didn't die necessarily.
Ivan.
Big bald head guy.
Obadiah Stane.
Yeah,
Oh.
Obadiah Stane. Maybe he wasn't killed or something.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
But it would have been nice
there's
to
other
see
villains.
some throwbacks. But yeah, and then the thing about seeing the Abomination is, though we briefly mentioned that movie in the original Avengers or whatever it was, that's kind of a movie we tend to want to forget about. Although I really liked it, it would have been a nice tip to the hat to that movie to have say the Abomination.
Well, they brought in Ross in this one, so
Right.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Bring
all
him back.
But
Cool.
I was gonna say one more thing too. I forgot what it was.
So on Robert's sequel, I think we need to install one more rule, Keith, just since you're here following along. Robert can't go last again because we're not going to see that sequel that Robert gave us, and that was such a good idea. Like legitimately, that's the movie we should be having.
Yeah.
And if I were to, that would be, I would like to say two, and then I'll shut up because I know I like to talk. I think if I were to organize it, like if I would have done this sequel, if I think it would have been Civil War Cap, and then Civil War Tony.
Do it as separate movies.
Yeah.
That could have been interesting.
Well, I was saying earlier that I was really disappointed in the fact that there isn't actually going to be Civil War Part 2.
Right.
That there isn't going to be a continuation of the Civil War storyline, that it's just going to go into the next Avengers movies and so on and so on, and that they'll just kind of touch on those things. But again, that kind of goes back to the idea that there should be that cohesive storyline that can stand alone. And
Right. Well, and I think what's interesting is talking about the sequels we want to see. The sequel we're going to get is the next Avengers movie.
Right.
Because that's pretty much next on tap. That's going to involve these characters directly. Because we've got Doctor Strange, who's not really going to have anything to do with anybody. Thor is going to be after that at some point. Again, Thor's off kind of doing his own thing. Are we getting Spider-Man before the first Infinity War?
Spider-Man's next year.
Is it? Okay, so we might get that. But again, he's tangentially involved in Civil War. So I think
Iron Man is going to be in Spider-Man.
Yeah, and that's true. But I think we're going to really resolve most of these things in
Is
Infinity
Iron
War.
Man or is Tony?
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I mean, yeah, but Downey Jr.'s in it. But I think what's interesting is the sequel we are going to get really to this will be the next Avengers movie. That is going to be the movie we have next. That really involves a lot of probably the plot points we're talking about now, which I think makes sense. You have the first Infinity War, which is them kind of having to gather. You have a threat big enough where everybody has to get back together again, kind of deal. Is probably they'll heal some of those wounds. That's like, well, we got to be together to fight this other threat. And I wanted to make a point too. We were talking about Vision. I think Vision's going to be very important to the next Avengers movie since he has the Infinity Stone.
I think it's going to be about. I think essentially the movie's going to be about protecting him.
Right, which I think makes a lot of sense. So I think we are going to see a lot more Vision. I like that he was wearing shirts and pants.
yeah.
Then they look bulky because all the stuff's underneath him, and I kind of loved that he was wearing polo shirts.
I love that they did such a good job of showing how he cared about these people.
Yeah.
Especially like with Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
I mean, he definitely. I mean, it's clear that he has a thing for her. That he's trying to understand. He might not understand what that is, but he's got a thing for her. But
Right.
I mean, even with Hawkeye, he was as gentle as he could. He's like, you. Even when in the midst of the combat, he's trying to talk them down.
Right.
Don't do this.
I think we're kind of done for the night. We could talk about this forever. Like I said, we didn't really talk much about Vision or Scarlet Witch or Ant-Man or a lot of other great stuff. But I think we're all on the same page. Go see this movie if you haven't already. Like again, I hope you've seen it before you listen to all this, as we spoiled every plot point. But yeah, it was great. So our usual rundown. Make sure MySequel is available on iTunes, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Make sure leave us a comment. What did you think of this? What was your sequel? What is your sequel to Civil War? Also, make sure leave a comment if there's a movie you would like us to talk about. We're actually gearing up for probably another few episodes where we're gonna. We've been kind of timely lately, and we're gonna kind of get back to some older movies. So we've got that coming up. So if you have a great idea, we might go ahead and do that right away. Other than that, subscribe, leave comments. Make sure to check out our other podcast, The Sprocket Docket, which is on an alternating schedule for MySequel. We have a video coming out real soon, Prop Guns. Keep an eye out for that. That is hopefully in the next few weeks. And if you didn't watch it, we did have a little video of four of us watching, marathoning some Marvel movies. So make sure to check that one out if you haven't yet already. I think with that, I think we're going to go and call it a night. We were a little bit longer on this one, but we had a full house. So it was kind of fun. So thanks, guys. It was fun.
I love you, Marissa Tomei.